Hi, welcome to Burning Questions. My name's Alec. I am the technical manager at Quellfire, and we've been running this mini-series about the topic of competency. What we wanted to do is get voices from outside of Quellfire that have from different areas of the passive fire protection community to share their views and points to give you a wider picture. Thankfully, today I'm being joined by Hassan Ahmed from Day Architectural. Thank you very much for joining me. Just for anyone that's not been following you on LinkedIn, because you do some very interesting posts, if you can just give a brief introduction of yourself and the company and what you do day to day, just so people know what sort of perspective you're coming from with this interview today.
Okay, firstly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, thank you.
So my name's Hassan Ahmed. Been in the industry for about 15 years, architectural technician by background.
Okay.
And I suppose largely healthcare sector work, and going on 10 years now at Day Architectural. A bit about Day Architectural, so specialising in healthcare, commercial, residential, high-rise in particular, and education. So those are the sectors that we typically work in. Based in Manchester, but we sort of, the spread is national.
Yeah, no. Quite a wide, broad spectrum, so you see it from quite a lot of different angles.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we see all sorts.
So, I mean, like I said, this mini-series, we've had a few guests already. We're talking about competency. So, I think the first question, and it's quite good so far because we've had some very good and different answers, is what does competency sort of mean to yourself?
I suppose there's, for me, a competency can be broken down into three parts. So I call it the 3 A's, if you like.
Okay.
So the first one, accepting what you don't know.
That's a good one. Yeah. That's a good start.
The second one, acknowledging what you need to know.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, acting upon it.
Yeah.
So those are my 3 key points of sort of achieving competency in any given subject.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I might steal that, so don't worry. That's definitely a good one for that. So no, it's good. And again, perfect points. And again, another different answer that we've had than everyone, but everyone seems to have the same focus. It's kind of the running theme of knowing what you don't know, what we all need to learn, what bits do we need to learn, and stuff like that. So but obviously you work on a lot of different projects, healthcare and schools. I noticed there is. So why do you think competency is important?
So I suppose competency for me, it's important because it sort of provides a framework for individuals and organisations to perform tasks safely.
Yeah.
In addition to that, it builds trust amongst clients and end users, and then sort of sets up the foundation really for great working relationships with consultants and contractors alike, manufacturers as well. For me, it comes down to really organisational reputation. If something, because clients and end users will look to us for our competency. If we're not competent, we won't get the work. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Obviously, if something goes wrong, it's life safety that's at risk. So that's what it all boils down to.
Yeah. So following on to that, so are you finding that you're being asked a lot more now about proving your competency from like an architectural?
Very much so at the bidding stage.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Really having to sort of demonstrate our competency. That might be by way of professional accreditations.
Yeah.
Any additional certifications or licenses that we may have. The IFE courses, that sort of thing, and CPDs, keeping a good record of CPDs, keeping all of that up to date. So those are the sort of things that we're using to demonstrate that competency.
Yeah, I suppose from your point of view, I mean, I obviously just focus on fire, but you have the whole building sort of thing to worry about as well. So yeah, it must be quite huge. Yeah. So what do you think then? Obviously you mentioned CPDs there, but what do you think can help support competency in the industry? What sort of things?
It starts with individuals and organisations accepting that they have those knowledge gaps or skills, experience, behaviours, and then sort of going from there. And then I think what will really help going forward is the new code of conduct that building control inspectors have now employed, which really has always been in place, but it's now being regulated through their new competency regimes. In respect to sort of an architect or technician may in the past have sort of leaned back on the building control inspectors quite often, more so than they should really should have done. And that's what I suppose what's brought this code of conduct in place. And I think what it now does is it sort of pushes that responsibility back to the designers to come up with the solution, to find out, do what they need to do to find the solution, and then present that to the building control or the building safety regulator. I think that will really help going forward. It'll take some time for the industry to find their feet, of course, but I think it's heading in the right direction.
I mean, we're always going to have those sort of difficult times at the start of any process. But I do. I think someone used the term with me that's, you have to go and do your homework and then present it to building control, which is kind of a different aspect before. So I do think that's going to be.
I quite like the idea of that because it's going to encourage the industry to take initiative. And really sort of self-reflect and develop your own knowledge. I'm a sucker for education and learning new things and what have you. I really enjoy that side of things. So I suppose for me, it's a case of passing that knowledge on to other members of our staff as well. A lot of that onus does come back to myself in our organisation, given that I've sort of come away from doing project work on a day-to-day basis to concentrate on compliance and technical matters, quality assurance, that kind of thing. So I do get sort of a lot of the guys coming back to me for that assistance.
It's good. You're sort of like the foundation, the backbone. I think a lot of people need that nowadays. It's good. In fact, and obviously I know we talked before we started filming that, but one of the things I think that helps the industry, and we sort of talked about, and I find that you're doing this on LinkedIn, we try and do it as well, is not sort of gatekeeping knowledge and stuff like that. It's sharing. I know obviously there are things certain companies will never share, trade secrets and all that type of thing, but this gatekeeping of knowledge and stuff like that, I think needs to sort of stop, and we need to share it, and it needs to be a bit more broader. My big problem is that a lot of the time we're always speaking to the converted, the ones that already should know it or have a lot of information, but there are, that's why we talk a lot. Architects, MEPs, they have a lot more other things. Fire is just a small part of their day to day, but I think it's good sharing it, and I think if we all communicate and talk and find where the low skill set is, or and even myself, I get a lot of information working with architects and MEP designers that I didn't know because it's not necessarily fire related, but it will affect me. So for example of that, I wasn't fully aware of stuff like MEPs might not know about first service supports from ours, and they're told different things, or we sometimes have to include extra products that would have a dramatic effect on the electrical side of things, and there's structural aspects and stuff like that as well. So I think it needs to be a lot more collaboration. I think that's going forward. So I think that they've been really good points. So
100%, and I think early engagement will really sort of slots into that perfectly, because it gives the opportunity to designers, particularly at an earlier stage, to get involved in those conversations much earlier on. And I think that in itself will sort of help support competency going forward. It's engagement, collaboration with manufacturers earlier in that design process when you do have the time, and I think that will really have a huge part to play going forward.
No, I totally agree. So again, obviously I know we're mainly focused on competency as well, but one of the things I thought would be good to get your perspective, because I think it ties into it, is obviously the introduction of the gateways have been brought in now. So do you find that, like with Gateway 2 now, that the early engagement, checking people's competency, and that is going to be key for that gateway, because it's now, like you said, you have to show all your paperwork before you sort of send it off, etc., which wasn't really done in the past. They built on the side. So, I mean, are you finding that sort of has helped push people towards the competency way, these like introduction to gateways and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have little choice really.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they've
no,
made it
yeah.
mandatory, haven't they? But
Yeah, people are still trying to fight it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I found that that's helped out, and again, even that's made me learn things about like rebus stages, which I wasn't too aware of. I know architects are quite big on the rebus side of things, but yeah, I'm trying to find out exactly where I slot into that.
Yeah.
And typically, I was brought in end of stage 4, stage 5, which I found way too late. More and more now, I'm getting dragged in at stage 3-ish just to start the initial conversation.
Yeah.
Especially because I deal with service penetration side of things. Obviously, structural might be before that, etc. But yeah, no, I do think it's getting, especially with the people I'm having conversation with, I do see it getting very good with that. So,
So I sort of think. Sorry, just if I may, I think I sort of think, perhaps even earlier, being involved even earlier.
Yeah, no, Mandy actually, she said the same thing.
Because we typically fire plans and fire strategies are, albeit at high level, are written at stage 2.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
We're finding more and more of that, and I think even at that stage, if you were to have, a sort of overview, if you like.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily getting into too much detail, because getting into too much detail too early can also be problematic. But just sort of going through, sort of highlighting any possible compliance issues and things like that, and it'll kind of pave the way going forward. I think sort of stage 2, getting involved at that stage is probably, in an ideal world, I would suggest getting involved at that stage.
No, I that's good points. And it's good. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be. You want all the answers at the start, but I think you've got to get that conversation because you don't want the amount of projects that get brought in too late and they've already gone so far down a rabbit hole and you're like, sorry, back out, start again.
Yeah, of course.
So it's crazy. So
we want to. Sorry, Alex.
No, it's good.
Because really, when we get to stage 3, we want to hit the ground running.
Yeah. So keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we need to know what are the things, hurdles and the like that we could potentially fall over on before going full steam ahead with stage 3.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's been the huge sort of change on some of the projects I've seen is they're like, whoa, they do see the benefit afterwards, and I think that's what you're seeing more and more people are seeing it. It's hurtful, the first project. They're like, why am I doing all this extra work before you even put a spade in the ground, etc. But I think the benefits outweigh out the negatives. So actually, that leads quite nicely on to the question is, so what sort of positive changes do you think are already happening? Because obviously I mentioned to you this before we started filming, is the industry at the moment focuses a lot on negativity, and I think what we need to do is start to shine the light on the positive things. So what positive changes do you think have already started to happen?
So an obvious one, which I sort of dealing with sort of on a daily basis, is people are starting to ask a lot more questions.
Yes.
Things that you thought you knew, it turns out you didn't actually know. And we get that from staff within, we get that from consultants, clients. It's all the same, at different levels. For example, if I use qualifier as an example, let's say we've got a fire collar. Someone may ask me, is that fire collar compatible with that partition? Well, if you go to the company's website, the headline might read up to 120 minutes EI.
Yeah.
But the key is the up to.
Yeah.
You really need to sort of ask the question and understand whether it really is compliant. So you need to look at all the different interfaces, and then you can come to a sort of a decision whether it's compliant or not. So historically, I don't think that really happened as much as it should have done.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Yeah, that sort of thing you've highlighted there is one of the things I think is going to change, because it kind of reminds me back in the days of broadband, where you can get speeds up to this, and it's no, let's check the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, I've had people think because a collar can do 4 hours, 2 hours, that that's fine, but the wall's only 30 minutes. I mean, what do you expect to do, float in midair or something? But yeah, no, I think that's a good point, is people not relying just on headlines or product data sheets. They need to dig a bit deeper now, and those, definitely a lot of questions are being asked. But yeah, I think you're right. The big positive thing is now that people are asking those questions, and provided they can get the answers, which is why, again, I think we should all share our knowledge. I think the industry is just going to get better and better that way. So
I mean, it's great as well now. We've got these sort of other working groups and trade associations that are sort of coming forward as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier the PFKG. That's great, and we've also sort of since all of this, since Grenfell really happened, ASFP for me has become sort of the go-to, if you like.
yeah.
So I'm an individual member of ASFP, and then there's other working groups like the Architecture Design Leadership Group, DIAHAS. These are architectural working groups where it's sharing technical knowledge on fire safety amongst architects. I don't think those groups would really exist if
that incident,
if it didn't happen. But sadly, the fire industry is an industry that's led by incidents.
Yeah, it happens quite a lot, and and I agree. I think obviously terrible incidents, but hopefully we're going to work towards not having something like that again. Which I think that was. I mean, we've had big fires and stuff before. I've done stuff outside. You had back, I can't remember what it was, in the 80s or 70s, you had the Piper Alpha fire and stuff like that. So there's always been big events, but I'm hoping Grenfell, at least in my lifetime, will be the big one. Though I do worry about the electrical side of things, like vehicles and stuff like that. But I think people are already highlighting those worries about scooters and stuff like that coming down. But the trade organisation things I think is great. I do like all the organisations. I just hope we can start, and that's why I like the PFKG and stuff like that, is they start to come together. I mean, we talked about the Purple Book, the best practice design. That was a collaboration between quite a lot of trade organisations, which, like I said, hopefully maybe they should have got architects involved as well. So I think maybe the next update to that, because it's good, but it's not 100%. It's a very good starting block, but let's get all the voices in, because I think you need the MEPs. I think you need architects, everyone involved, because it's a big sort of party, and we all need to be sort of involved in that as well. So we've looked at positives, and again, I don't like to do negatives, but what sort of challenges the industry is still facing at the moment?
So challenges for me, there's a couple. So I suppose the first one is sort of, as a designer, being able to obtain the relevant information as and when it's needed.
Okay.
So there's certain quarters within the passive fire industry. Take fire doors, for example. Sometimes it can be quite difficult to get the sort of the classification reports and things like that.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose sometimes it's also a case of understanding what it is we actually need. So, for example, someone might ask, "Can we have a test report?" Well, why do you need a test report? I'm sure you get that quite often. And it's probably a lot of information in there that will be irrelevant. I suppose it's asking for the right information as well. So, whether that's the extended application report or it's the classification report. But even then, we find sometimes, particularly, as I said, dealing with fire door industry manufacturers, it can be quite difficult. I mean, I would suggest perhaps, even if that information was available in a redacted format, perhaps that would be useful, because we do get asked by clients, building control, for that information, and sometimes if you don't get it, and you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
I totally agree. I mean, we try, obviously, fire doors are a bit outside my remit, so we try and provide certain things. There are certain things I try and do. I think terminology you mentioned there, so a test report is very different than a classification report. So not everyone, I'll be honest, I could send out some of our test reports to people and they'd look at me like, what does this mean? Because it's just, well, we test in this way and manner. But yeah, I think everything's, and I'm hoping that the CCPI that's going to be coming into play for manufacturers will sort of address these things where information should be readily available and a bit more clear, because there's a lot of things out there that people just, they look at product data sheets, they look at pictures, and they're not getting the background information side of things. And I think fire doors, especially because of some of the changes with the removal of BS 476 and stuff like that coming out, that they need to sort of, you know, I can't speak for them, but they're going to have to be able to be a bit more open and share things. I suppose the big issue there is it depends on who you're speaking to, because obviously you speak to Qualifire, we're the manufacturer, and you can speak to our technical team. Obviously, if you're going through a distributor or a third party or something like that, the chain can be a bit long. So I suppose it's making sure you know where the product originates from and try and get the right people to talk to. But hopefully, I mean, so are you finding technical teams, and you can even, you know, open and honest here, you can be any thing. So are you finding that it's hard to speak to a lot of technical teams, or to get that information? Obviously, fire doors, you're saying you're struggling there. Is it just fire doors, or is it?
Yes, so I think, so coming from sort of this side of the fence, it'd be good if we were in a position where we're able to speak to sales representatives with technical know-how.
Yeah.
That's one of the challenges we do face at the moment, is where a regional sales manager might be our first point of contact. Really, you know, we've got to think on our feet. So if I'm getting in touch with a regional sales manager, I need answers there and then. I can't wait for 5 minutes, 10 minutes for them to sort of get that feedback from their technical team, because in 5 minutes, my mind's going to go somewhere else.
You're on the next.
Yes,
next issue.
I've got to do something else.
Yeah.
You know, so this is why I think industry does need to upskill in that respect, and perhaps looking at things like the IFE courses, level 2 or level 3. Funnily enough, I'm doing the level 3 at the moment, so I'm studying.
Yeah.
There's a lot to take in.
There is stuff. Yeah,
So of course, you've done it and you passed. Well done.
Thank you.
But yeah, that's a huge task, and I think, you know, people do ask me, why are you doing it? Because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, I enjoy learning, and you know, I don't necessarily need to know the full details of how a fire collar is made and all of this sort of stuff, but it interests me. And I think, going back to the point of competency, I think to be competent in something, you should have some kind of knowledge of how a product is made, because that sort of gives you the extension by which you can determine how the application of it can be used in scenarios.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the level 2 or the level 3 aren't the be all and end all.
No, it's stepping blocks.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of the, you know, some of this information you can find by other means. That's just my preferred way of doing it. As I said, I enjoy the process of. I mean, if I had the option, I'd go back to university.
No, I'm the same. They joke, they call me Mr. CPD and stuff like that, because I dive into areas. Yeah, it's not my focus, but I feel one of my goals is, if people ask me questions that maybe not necessarily my remit, but I can go, well, I watch this. This person you can talk to, or you know, because it's such a minefield of an industry that you just don't know. But going back to your thing of like knowing how things work, I think from architects as well as installers, because things look good on pieces of paper, but it's not necessarily able to be installed, and vice versa. So there needs to be a measure of understanding from other parties outside of, you know, we can't be blinkered as such. So I mean, I did an example with some design teams for Wilmot Dixon, where they had to design the opening, they then built the wall, and these are people that are just normally sat behind a desk. They learned to build the wall, they made the letterbox opening, they put the services in, and then they do the fire stopping. And then they found by the last stage, because they hadn't really followed the design, you know, that it started getting harder and harder and harder. And then they realized, 100 mil, and they were doing like 100 mil spacing, which is a luxury on some of the projects, really. But they were starting to think, oh, I can't fit my hand here, and this, see, now you start to see it from the other end, and vice versa. I think sometimes M&Es don't see how important it is. Oh, this architect's done a nice drawing, but there's a big hole. I'll just chuck my stuff in how I want and stuff like that. So yeah, I think there needs to be not necessarily you have to be experts in every avenue, but to have an understanding, I think we all need to start looking a bit beyond, outside the box, as they would say, type of thing. So yeah, no, we're definitely on the same there. I think that's why, we talk quite a lot before this and that. So it's, I'm the same. I like to learn. I think we need that passion in the industry, because there needs to be focal people that they go and speak to. Like you said, your team is already coming to speak to you, and I find the same with some of my team. Sometimes I wish I could change my name, stuff like that. But yeah, it's I think that's the sort of industry needs to go.
Yeah.
So
I suppose the other challenges then are one which you've mentioned already is the sort of the transition between BS 476 and the relevant EN test standard. We're finding we're having conversations with, again, going back to the example of fire doors, compatibility and all that lovely stuff with partitions, which are now typically tested to EN standards.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's whether there's that compatibility issue with then putting in a door that's tested to BS 476.
No, it is. I mean, obviously, I think the changes are needed. I think BS 476 is quite an old. This is my opinion. And for a lot of manufacturers, they have been testing to the EN standards for quite some time, and I do think that there has been some. Even when I joined the industry, people were talking about its removal. So it's not like it was suddenly Friday announced and thing. But yeah, it must be quite difficult. And again, people not understanding the differences. And I mean, why should an architect necessarily know the difference, etc. But I think that's where you're benefiting, because you're getting ahead of the curve and looking at these issues now, etc. as well. So that actually brings on. You've already sort of talked to it a bit already, but again, getting ahead of the curve. So what are what are Day Architectural doing to get ahead of like legislation and stuff that's coming into play at the moment?
So one of the key things, and more recently what we've been looking at, is the format of our CPDs and staff training.
Okay.
And I noticed this the other day when I tried to obtain my Quellfire CPD certificate as well. So you've got to go through a question and answer sort of thing after the fact.
Hopefully not too difficult, but yeah, just
it's that emphasis on reflections and the like. Yeah, absolutely. And so that's, and ARB, the Architects Registration Board, they've now sort of come up with a framework of CPDs as well, which sort of goes along those lines. And we've adopted that now.
Yeah.
Sort of pushing that through, and of course I've done mine. And it's just keeping it going, I guess. But that finding is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
It really gives staff the opportunity to reflect and understand, and then also on the back of that, then sort of find any knowledge gaps that they may have, and if they've got any CPDs that they would prefer to do, so they'd come and speak to myself or the colleagues to arrange the relevant CPDs. So we're finding that to be really, really good. And then there's the competency frameworks as well.
Yeah.
Of course, ARB, CIAT, which is my chartered body, they have the competency frameworks, which we're implementing, and then also taking on board the ASFP's new competency framework as well. So there's a bit in there for designers, so we've taken some of that and sort of got a bit of a hybrid approach going on.
Yeah, that's good. But yeah, you're thinking on your feet, you're trying to get ahead of it before, proactive more than reactive, which I think is always a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And some of the competency points in ASFB's framework, some really pertinent points in there as well. Yeah. And making use of them as well. So
that's good. Really I liked your point about the CPD thing, because I think there has been a shift on how CPD is. I'll be honest, when I first looked at them, it seemed to always happen over lunchtimes, and more people were interested in what sandwiches are readily available than actually maybe the topic. So I do think that people are, I do a lot with the IFE, Institute of Fire Engineers, and because it's actually usually after work as well, everyone is, we want to be here, we want to listen, the questions are good. I mean, even the Quellfire CPD you were on, I was actually on it myself because, again, I have to keep my hours up every year as well, and that's why I saw the questions, and, you'll be getting your answers and that, because, again, I feel, they were good questions. They highlighted the areas that people, we still don't understand this part, so unfortunately, when you only have an hour slot, you can't answer everything. And you'll see that I've given quite complex answers, so hopefully they don't shock everyone. But I think that's the big change on the way CPDs are viewed now in the industry. And I think, especially now that a lot of people are getting used to more remote access, so Zooms and Teams. I know everyone likes to have site visits, and it's great to be face-to-face, etc. But I think the way the industry is moving, that sort of technology and freedom is enhanced the ways that, I can talk to people all across the UK, or technically all across the world in one session, instead of having to drive to Manchester, drive to Aberdeen, etc. So I think that's opened. So I am glad that CPDs are growing. Webinars and CPDs are one of the things in the back of my head that I think I want to dive into more, because I have a lot of stuff up here, like yourself, you're saying, and I think, we need to get that out there. So no, it's good. It's good.
Another form of CPD which we've recently started doing as well is, and it's not necessarily formal CPD, but it's factory visits to manufacturers. And I mean, I've a couple of weeks ago I went to a door manufacturer down in London.
Okay.
It was eye-opening. It was great. It really was. And then more recently, last week, I took a group of our staff with us to an intumescent coating manufacturer.
Yeah, just to see.
Just to look at that, and obviously it was good for me as well, because, as I said, because I'm doing my level 3, there's a large aspect of reactive coatings.
Big.
So that was interesting to see. I think it's good to see the products that we're specifying.
Yes, definitely.
Especially in the sort of the process of making them. And it gives us the reassurance as well, when you see the level of stringent QA that goes on within the factory. It's a breath of fresh air. It really is. Yeah,
and it's good to share. It's the same as, like, I pick the brains of lots of architects and stuff like that, because I don't understand, like, CAD drawings, BIM, and the other aspects of that. And it's good. We've got to look at each other's worlds and go, and it's I'm glad that's good for you in that as well. So I mean, this is quite a good one, and I think you kind of already mentioned it as well earlier, but when you find that something is outside of your competency or your knowledge, what do you do to try and get over that sort of hurdle?
You can look at it as an opportunity to learn, develop knowledge, and in terms of sources of information, I would typically, and I'd encourage our staff to go over to IHS, where there's a plethora of British standards, BRE documents, all sorts. And if the information isn't there, then it's a case of reaching out to manufacturers. Sometimes getting that first-hand information is great, and I find just getting the answer isn't enough.
You want the
I want to know why that's the answer.
No, I agree.
And you won't always find that in the British standards, and you'd usually only get that by speaking to manufacturers and technical staff such as yourself. And again, that's another way of learning. It's understanding why it is the way it is.
But also, you might have to, and this is why, even when sometimes we have to say the word no, I try to, if I can, give the reason why. It's because it's going against, for example, we use fire doors a lot, but often we see in remedial work, they've put a cable or something through the door frame. So I have to say, no, there isn't a tested solution. The test standard says that it should be this distance. And, I try to give the reason why, because usually it's a fire stopper. They need to go back to the client, and they can't just go to the client. Computer says no, they need to go. Unfortunately, you can't because of this reason. So I think, you need to pass that on. And then maybe next time there's going to be a light bulb in someone's head that goes, oh, we can't do that. And, can go back to that information. So I do think the answer's not, it's only half the battle. It's the when and why. So which hopefully you'll see with your questions that
Mm-hmm.
I've done that. I've tried to give you the why as well as the answer as well. So
Looking
yeah,
forward to
not a problem.
So also having conversations with trade associations, ASFB, who I mentioned before.
Yeah.
So I've had a couple of discussions recently with Andy Taylor, Stuart Southall, and the like, and it's been really helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been really, really helpful having.
Yeah, that's where I find sometimes, like, they don't let me out the office very often, sometimes I get day release, but yeah, no, I try to go to certain events and stuff like that because I think the networking side of things is important to bounce people off ideas. It is good, like I said, the remote thing has been very good for certain aspects, but I do think when you can get in a room, people not necessarily let the guards down, but they relax, there's, and they just sort of get into things and, you've only had an hour talk on the phone and then you get off and you're like, oh, why didn't I say this, and etc. like that. So yeah, no, I try to attend as much as I can, but it's hard because it's also hard trying to find some of the events. That's why, to be honest, my favourite one is London Build, which obviously we talked for quite some time when there, but I find that I get a bigger, broader spectrum of people to talk to because it's quite diverse. It's not just fire, even though I'm in the fire section. You'll get architects, you'll get MEPs as well as things. So it's not to take away the other events I go to because they're normally a lot more in depth. So fire safety, etc. We go big into the fire and maybe broaden what we're talking about with some of the experts. But I do like events like London Build, etc., which obviously I did see you at. So it was good to see you on that as well. So thank you for answering those questions. I suppose what I would like to end the call on, sort of thing is to sort of achieve competency. What do you think people should be looking to do? Like, what would you say, sort of like a roundup of what we discussed, sort of thing?
I'd say it's being able to look within.
Okay.
And really find where you think you need to sort of increase your knowledge, and being able to do that would really sort of that would really pave the way to achieving true competency.
Yeah.
We can't rely on others to tell us what we need to learn. No. It's got to come from within.
Yeah.
I 100% believe that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think like both of us agree that education is the way forward. Every day is a school day.
Yes.
And, we're never too old to learn, and I think everyone needs to sort of realise that as well. Yeah. But it's been great. Obviously, this topic's been mostly about competency, but in the future we want to dive into more interesting topics as well. So we're obviously, if you've not been too put off about doing interviews and stuff, we'd like to obviously get your views on things later down the line as well. So I'm sure the audience, will happily comment. And I think getting your perspective has been worthwhile because it's opened my eyes. That's why I delved a little bit outside of competency, because it's good to get your views on things. So thank you very much for joining us. Cheers. Thank you. So that's everything from me and Hassan from this episode of Burning Questions. If you have any questions, please make sure you feel free to contact us on the information that's going to pop up on the screen. And as always, make sure you tune in for further episodes. And if there is any topic that you think would be beneficial, please comment, and let us know, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you very much.